Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the 2019 drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Stewart Muir, Executive Director of the Resource Works Society. Welcome back to the show, Stewart.
Hey, thanks, Jim.
Stewart, our first chat since the federal election. What kind of message has been sent to the natural resources sector by the minority government re-elected with Justin Trudeau at the head?
Well, it's a bit of a mixed message. I know that the defenders of the Liberals will say, hey, we bought you a pipeline. How dare you complain about this treatment? What they don't understand from that Toronto perspective, where people like to say that, is that there are so many ways, and we have new evidence this week with Encana's departure from Canada to the U.S., that the West's issues are just not understood. This sort of mindset in Ottawa that there is this big green energy transition going on. We don't need oil and gas or coal. It's bad. Got to get rid of it as soon as possible. These people have no understanding whatsoever of the economics of the country. They have a Ministry of Finance. Apparently no one ever talks to them, because if they did, they would realize that the only reason we have any semblance of trade balance in Canada is because of crude oil exports. That's literally what pays the rent for us as a country. And these people want to get rid of it. There's only one word, Jim. I hate to use strong language like this, but I'm going to. They really are fools, in not considering the realities of a resource-rich and resource-dependent country. So this is what we're dealing with, is that foolish mentality has been entrenched and supported by what some urban voters have decided to vote for. That's what we're dealing with. I don't say that as a partisan statement. I mean, it's just a reality. The fact is, the great majority of our wealth as a country comes from the fact we've been able to successfully, while protecting the environment and making progress with climate, have mining, forestry, aquaculture, oil and gas. But all of these things are the enemy of that kind of urban idealist mindset, which seems to be running the capital in Ottawa.
Well, you said, for example, the federal Liberals are against BC fish farming. How successful is fish farming in BC? How much of a big part of the economy is it?
Well, there's many different ways to come at it. It's the largest cargo shipments category at YVR are farm salmon. The largest agricultural export, the most valuable from BC, farm salmon, grown in net pens, Atlantic salmon. It is, I would argue, the greenest industry. I know some people say, hey, wait a minute, Stu, what are you talking about? What about those sea lice? Well, of course there are management issues, just as there are management issues with everything we do in life, and balancing those risks. We've had incredible progress from a time when, hey, aquaculture wasn't perfect when it started. There were a lot of sort of cowboy operations. That's been totally cleaned up, totally different. But we've had the federal Liberals disastrously making a commitment during this last campaign. I think it was a desperate ploy to get some green votes in urban areas onto the Liberal ticket. And did it succeed? I don't think it actually made any difference at all. So they've trashed our best, greenest, one of the best creators of jobs for Indigenous people in places where there are no full-time year-round jobs, let alone high-paying ones like salmon farming. They've said, we want you out of this country. They've said that to please, and the bizarre thing is how it came about, because there are lobbyists employed by a large Liberal donor who, the lobbyists are also on the board, one of them, of the Liberal Party of Canada, who got this commitment into the platform. I mean, there should be an investigation, I think, by the RCMP into this. And that's how we have destruction of communities on Vancouver Island that is going to happen if they implement this disastrous policy. It's absolutely scandalous, Jim. People should be outraged.
Now, of course, Albertans are upset that the Liberals have banned tankers off the BC coast. So how do we get oil out of our country to the markets that need it? Is this going to be a continued policy and continue to increase Western alienation?
Yeah. Well, look what's happening down in the States. In the history of oil production globally, one of the biggest increases in annual oil production happened in 1973 in Saudi Arabia. Remember that? For those of us who were around, of course, that was the oil crisis, and Saudi Arabia massively ramped up their production. That wasn't the highest that we've ever seen an annual increase. The USA in 2018 actually was the highest ever annual increase in oil production. Why? Because they are now getting their oil to markets, the very same markets, including China, that for 10 years, more than that, Canada has been working steadily, doing things all the right way, working to get into. Well, the U.S. says, hey, we're going to get in there and eat Canada's lunch and our breakfast and dinner. And you know what? They're doing that. Meanwhile, this is being cheered on by energy fetishists in Ottawa who have really no clue and don't want to know. I mean, these people, they hide from having information. They don't want to know facts about energy. I can tell you bureaucrats in Ottawa are frustrated as heck because the apparatchiks from the Liberal Party are thinking they're saving the planet, but in fact, they're really destroying the Canadian economy.
What would Ottawa do and Eastern Canada do without all the oil royalties generated by Saskatchewan and Alberta? And natural gas, I guess, in BC.
Yeah, sure. They could just rebrand Canada as Argentina. That would probably pretty much send the message that would be the result, because it would mean us massively ramping down our quality of life, the ability to provide services to citizens, whether they're in cities or in the middle of Nunavut. Everyone benefits from these activities, and there is this sort of philosophical assault on the Canadian way of life by people who have, as I've said, really no understanding of how the energy system works.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Cypress Development Corp is developing a world-class lithium resource in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. The size of the resource makes the Clayton Valley project a premier asset with the potential to impact the future of lithium supply. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the OTCQB, symbol CYDVF, and on Frankfurt, symbol C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Stewart, you've talked to a lot of First Nations people and organizers. Are they for or against natural resource development?
Oh, they're sick with worry about what's happening in natural resource policy from governments that are trying to destroy the ability of rural First Nations in particular, but not only, to escape the poverty which our system has consigned them to. They're sick with rage.
What kind of projects do they want to take part in?
They want to take part in projects that create jobs for communities that aren't in downtown Toronto. They want to have royalties that come, or other benefits that come from projects that occur on traditional territories. They want to see the young people get away from the cycle of addiction, suicide that is unseen by the urban voters who are informed by idealist notions of the resource future. They would like to have some, I think, I hear this all the time, a respectful shared prosperity. You know, the extremes that we sometimes hear of in this space, the reality I see is Indigenous leaders who are really just looking for ways to be part of Canada in ways that history has denied to them. And those ways are in reach. You know, we have the legal, the fiscal, the democratic, educational pathways in place now for Indigenous people to fill them and fill them well and benefit everybody. But there are still these barriers that are being deliberately placed in front of them. And I think that's why when I go to conferences like I am next week in Calgary with dozens of First Nation leaders and groups from across Canada, when I go to, in January, ResourceWorks is hosting a one full day educational conference on the UNDRIP legislation in BC, which I think is a good thing. It's been welcomed by industry, but welcomed by First Nations leaders. You know, those I'm speaking to are welcoming changes, but they're also wanting opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Now, was the Grand Chief of Canada's Assembly of First Nations behind the construction of the pipeline?
Well, he spoke at the Board of Trade in Vancouver this week, and I think made it very clear that this is a project that has got Indigenous support. The opportunities there, you know, I've gone to meet with First Nations leaders on their land. I wanted to show my respect for Indigenous title and historical integrity by visiting First Nations to talk to them. And I've heard from those on the line that it's possible to have good agreements with industry that allow there to be, success for the First Nations. And it's not necessarily easy in every case to get there, but as industry, in particular the Trans Mountain Pipeline is showing, it's definitely possible. And, you know, I've been critical of the federal government. In some ways, I would give the Liberal government a lot of praise, especially the former Natural Resources Minister who lost his seat in Edmonton last week, Minister Sohi. I think he did an excellent job in driving the Indigenous consultation phase in the earlier part of 2019 as mandated by the courts, because that was a little piece that didn't get quite right the first time. They have filled the gap, and now we're good to go. So it's taken a lot of work by a lot of people, a lot of frustration. It's cost probably a couple of $2 billion in lost opportunity because of the opposition efforts to stymie and delay. But now Canadians working together, I think, are getting past this.
Do people want resource development and a green economy at the same time, and will there be discussions about that?
Well, I've polled on this topic in 2017. We engaged at ResourceWorks, we engaged Ipsos to ask that very question. And we found that there's very high, I'm talking to 80%, 79, 80, 81% support for the idea that we can have a green economy that relies on natural resources. And so clearly if we have 4 out of 5 Canadians or British Columbia residents for sure who believe this, I think it's possible that we can get to a better place than we are right now.
Is there a forum coming up about that?
There are a few people who are talking about that. I mean, I'll be in January when we have our UNDRIP 2020 conference in the Lower Mainland. Details to follow. January 14th. Save the date if you're interested in this stuff. Definitely will be at the heart of it, and we're looking to bring together a broad range of views. I mean, you have to be open and accessible, and I think the more diverse views, even people who disagree with each other, have to be prepared to sit down and hash things out. And I think there's been maybe too little of that, especially in an election year. People tend to, go to their positions and fight from there. But I think it's really time to come together and solve these issues.
We'll have more with Stewart Muir right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Stewart Muir. Let's talk about Encana deciding to pull up stakes in Calgary, where they've been since 2002, and move to the U.S. Who are they? What are they? And should we be concerned about this?
Yeah, we should be very concerned. There's a company, they have, I believe, about 2,000 employees. They were formed in 2002, but they come out of some very long-term Canadian brands that go back a long, long ways to the founding of Canada. So the corporate lineage is absolutely blue ribbon of this group, a public company, and they didn't announce that they're departing Canada so much as moving their corporate domicile to the U.S. So they've been careful in the language. It sounds like maybe the same amount of activities will occur in Canada in the future. Maybe the same number of people will be employed in Canada in the future. But as they seek to raise capital to do the things they want to do internationally and maybe in Canada, they are finding that there are limitations, and they are, I think there's always a degree of politeness around these things. Companies don't like to pick fights with government, but you can read into it that there is a lot of frustration here with the conditions that have been placed on the activities of the company. They are one of the companies that was very early in seeing the BC Montney shale potential back at the start, really, 2002. I interviewed Glenn Morgan, who was CEO of the company when it started. I interviewed him at the Waterfront Hotel in Vancouver. I was business editor at the Vancouver Sun at the time, and I really thought, wow, this is a guy who's got a sharp vision. He was so intense, and he knew what he wanted to do. And then he actually went out and did exactly what he had set out to. And how often in the corporate world do you see someone who not only has the vision, but then executes it perfectly? They did. So they had the vision to lay down the track in BC that eventually led to LNG. You know, they had a partnership with Mitsubishi, which is a partner in LNG Canada. They saw that coming a long time ago. And so did Mitsubishi. They could see what was going on, and they wanted to partner with a quality Canadian company, and they found Encana. I just think that speaks to the vision. I'll tell you one thing for sure is that when a company like this goes and they have expressed concerns about the lack of a coherent or any really national energy strategy in Canada, we should be listening. And I've been looking at the problem in Canada of having no national energy strategy, and I recently have been writing about how debilitating this is going to be to the economy. Do you know what? I was right on the money, because this is why we're losing capital. We've got smaller companies leaving Canada this week. In fact, last week we had layoffs in the oil patch. You can't say it's all the fault of one political party, but the Liberals are in charge in Ottawa, and they have no desire for a national energy strategy. What they want to do is pretend that their climate plan is the national energy strategy, which is just stupid. So what they need to do is get away from saying, oh, we put a price on pollution, that's our energy strategy, and they need to actually do some work to define how the provinces and territories and the feds are going to work together to actually stand up for Canada. You know, right now, the United States, during the quarter we're in, Q4 2019, is on track to become, for the first time ever, a total net petroleum exporter. They are increasing their oil and gas exports. They've cleared the way to do that through legislative changes. They're doing it. They've got infrastructure going in, and they're really eating our lunch.
Stewart, how can people express their concerns about this without seeming like there's some kind of wacko? That they want something that has a good energy strategy and something that also is good for the environment.
Yeah, I mean, everything I've said aligns with my belief that we can have and do have the low carbon economy and industries to support it that we need. I would not be making these statements if I didn't believe that we were able to do this, and I do believe that. And how can others do it? I think that's an excellent question. Of course, we have our turn at the ballot box every year, a couple of years, every few years. Yeah. What else can you do? Well, I think just trying to get a balanced view of things, try to read, credible information sources. There's a new book by a Canadian professor called Václav Smil, S-M-I-L. He's actually Bill Gates' favorite writer. Whenever Václav puts out a new book, and he's written about 40 of them on energy policy, Bill Gates is the first person to pick it up. Now, that's a pretty good recommendation given the obvious accomplishments of Gates. His new book on growth is really interesting, and it just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's not for cheerleaders. Oh yeah, great, let's do all this. It's about the complex decisions and dependencies that exist. I think it's important to have depth in understanding the issues, especially if your kids are coming home from school and saying, "Mom, Dad, we're killing the planet because you have that car in the driveway." What do you say to that? I think it's really important to have good information. There's a lot of what kids are getting fed in schools is not balanced. It's often not even true. It comes from a very ideological point of view, and it's often quite hostile to having the quality of life and the environmental balance that we need. So if you can't explain the world to your kids better than the school has indoctrinated them, that's probably a good place to think about how you can, get better about it, because we need to succeed with this stuff, and driving people into these conflict areas maybe isn't the best way to go.
Stewart, do you have a conference coming up in Banff?
Yeah, I'll be at the Banff Forum. It's actually not held in Banff, I know, but it's in Mont-Tremblant, Quebec, the Whistler of Quebec. I'll be out there next week. I'll be attending the Banff Forum. It's an annual gathering for young, up-and-coming leaders from business who want to be at the cutting edge of ideas. I'll be hosting or moderating a panel on the future of energy for Canada and globally. And it's going to be a really interesting discussion. The Quebec view of energy is often very different than the Western one. And yet we need to solve these issues as a country if we're going to be a country.
Stewart, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks, Jim.
If you have any questions for Stewart or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Stewart's website is resourceworks.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.